What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Orrico, joined today by my buddy, Chris Welsh, and we are going to be bringing you through 10 must-have fantasy baseball prospects that you should be targeting in your upcoming 2026 fantasy baseball drafts. We did something kind of similar to this a couple months ago, but time moves on, information changes, ADP changes, so we're going to break down all those changes today while we're going through these 10 must-have prospects. Buddy Welsh, it's great to be on with you again, man. How you doing?
You know, I love talking prospects. I love talking with Joe Orrico. The other thing that changes a little bit from what we did before is we're also tier basing some of these. So there's kind of three brackets or three pools, if you will, of these prospects. There's the elite options, and usually the elite options are those guys. I remember a couple years ago when Julio Rodriguez was coming up, his ADP was in the like 220, 230s, and everyone was like, I wonder what would happen if they signed him to a deal or they committed to him being a starter. And then it happened in like February. They said Julio is vying for the spot. Rocket ship of his value starting going up. So we've got the elite options. There's two prospects we're going to hit that, you know, kind of qualify at that. If there was some type of deal or a commitment, we would go nuts. We've got a second tier of guys that are kind of like, if they break camp, they're going to be the players that you want. And then we're going to look at a couple deeper options. You know, can you draft them right now? I don't know, you can 100% draft them, but they should be on your radars because if they were to break camp or if they come up early, they're the guys you're going to want. That makes up 10 prospects for your drafts this year.
It's a good time to draft too. I mean, I like drafting all throughout the winter, but to your point, if you're drafting these guys now, you're getting some really nice prices that you might not see once spring training comes around. If we hear certain guys have made the opening day roster, some of these guys we're going to talk about, specifically the first couple, could end up being top 100 picks. So we're going to dive in. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and let us know below which prospects have your interest peaked heading into 2026. But let's start it off with Kevin McGonigle. He is somebody that is very intriguing. If you look at his ADP in early drafts, just over the last month or so, his ADP is about 284 on the NFBC. Now, he gave you 19 home runs, 10 stolen bases, and a 305 average last year across single A, high A, and double A. Do you think there is a chance we see him on the opening day roster here for the Tigers, Welsh? They've got Colt Keith slotted in at third, Gleyber Torres at second, probably Zach McKinstry at short. How does Kevin McGonigle fit into this equation?
Well, the most interesting part about it is McGonigle went to the Arizona Fall League to work out at third base. So that was where they ended up wanting to potentially slide him for some position flexibility. Primary shortstop, could play second. He actually might have played a game or two at second base in the Arizona Fall League, but he came out, won the MVP, and he played third base that whole time. Now, what's interesting about him versus the other elite option is McGonigle, a little bit older, also feels like he's like one quick step away from this other guy that we're going to talk about. And part of that is because of the run he did in the Arizona Fall League. But they're also openly talking about it. Tarek Skubal came out and saw him, said he's ready. The team said they're trying to change the context of the players that they have around him, guys that aren't striking out, guys that are getting on base. That's exactly what Kevin McGonigle does with the position flexibility. So where he would fit would be probably some version of him playing between third and second base. The problem is they have a couple of those, like, you know, Zach McKinstry, they love. They don't want to take him really out of the field. They don't want to take Colt Keith out of there. But I think they view Kevin McGonigle as like this elite option. I actually talked to Rene Rivera, who's a coach with the Tigers, who was the coach of the Scottsdale team. And we were talking about him versus Max Anderson. And he was just saying, like, you know, Max is this kind of like maxed out prospect of like where he was. Kevin McGonigle he's still building in, like, it's a sky's the limit type of player. Even if at some points Max looked a little bit better than McGonigle, but McGonigle won MVP out there. He showed that not only is his patience with that 3-4 slash he had during the season, the bat is elite, but also the defense is on the plus side. McGonigle does a bit of everything. This Tiger team wants to win, and I think if they view that as a win, it's why Kevin McGonigle has a legitimate shot to break camp. Now, if they were to go and sign Alex Bregman or something like that, or make a trade, I think that pour some cold water on him coming up this year. Him not getting to AAA pours a little bit of cold water, but I think the team, I'm not sure there's been a prospect that has been more openly and outwardly talked about making the roster and them literally doing everything they could in the offseason for it. I think Kevin McGonigle is going to get a legit shot. He can be a 5-category player. He's legitimately got 20 plus home run power. He could steal double-digit bases and hit for a high average. And he is the prospect that you got to take a shot on of one of the two elite players here.
I'm interested. I'm really interested, especially when you look at who's going around him in drafts right now. It's Miguel Vargas, it's Jake Berger, it's Luis Arise, Ernie Clement, Justin Crawford. Doesn't really get you that excited. Brendan Donovan's going there. I like Brendan Donovan, but if you're shooting for upside and you're going for a last round pick, especially if you're drafting right now, Kevin McGonigle is a very interesting name. Another name who has a chance to maybe even surpass McGonigle in terms of hype is Konnor Griffin. I've heard a lot of good things about him in 122 games last year. 21 homers, 65 stolen bases, and a 333 batting average. That will play anywhere. Now, I've heard some people say this is kind of like an Ellie De La Cruz if he hit for a higher batting average and didn't strike out as much. That sounds pretty appealing if you're able to get a 20-60 guy. Now, will the Pirates have him on the opening day roster? This is not a team that has exactly jumped players up to the major leagues before they're ready. We saw with Bubba Chandler last year how long they made him wait, but I don't think Konnor Griffin really has anything else to prove in the minor leagues, despite the fact that he has only reached Double-A. Welsh, do you think that he needs a little bit more time in the minors, or could he break camp with the Pirates?
So that's been the biggest question. We did a lot of that at we were at the First Pitch Arizona, having that conversation a ton. Does he have more to prove? Well, I think running it back, he has like one full season under his plate. That's it. This past season is everything he's done. He's a 19-year-old kid, but he passed every single test. I mean, 3.45 slash. You thought it's like unicorn-like homers and power numbers. Like there really wasn't a huge negative in his game. Maybe they could have wanted like the strikeouts to be a little bit lower, but he answered every single call. So does he have anything left to prove? Not from the first season, but that he can run it back again. But the biggest question, obviously, at least for me, unlike Kevin McGonigle, is it seems like he might be tied to having to sign a deal. And that was something that got floated around. I know James Anderson, our friend, loves the idea that he could break camp and the team would sign him. I didn't really buy it. And then all of a sudden, the rumors started floating out. If he signs a deal, this is the Julio Rodriguez thing. Konnor Griffin will go from, what is his ADP in NFBC right now? It's around like 230. Like there's a lot of speculation on him.
Yeah, he has been moving up the board a little bit. If you're looking over the most recent sample of drafts, he's inside the top 200, 195 over the last month.
See, and this is the speculative market because like people assuming very early on, if he signs that deal, he breaks camp with this team because then they've killed all the arbitration. There's no reason to hold him back. I think there could still be reasons that they, even if they signed a deal, they could. But presumably he signs the deal, he's up. And that profile from everything we saw last year in the minors, like this is someone that would be worthy of potential top 100 in fantasy. I mean, if you got a guy that can go 20-40, the O'Neal Cruz thing I kind of scoffed at because Konnor Griffin can, hit the ball and he can hit it consistently. But that's the O'Neal Cruz type of stats, like 20, 50, 20, 40. Like he could do it. He could live up to the O'Neal Cruz potential if he's there. But the massive question is literally about if he signs this deal. Because if he doesn't, I think there's a path where the Pirates are trying to win this year. They slow roll him. They don't know what's going to happen with the new bargaining agreement. And maybe we don't. But if he does, he's going to be one of the youngest players to make a pro debut in quite some time. I think there's one before that, but Justin Upton comes to mind as like a 19-year-old that made his debut. Here's my question, though, for you. If he doesn't have a deal signed that buys out his arbitration years, are you going to speculate on Konnor Griffin in any draft this year? Because his talent is the title of our episode. The prospect that you've got to target in drafts because his fantasy skill set is unicorn-like. But if he doesn't have a deal in place and it's simply like, oh yeah, maybe he could have a shot, do you think inside the top 200 or even top 150, if it keeps moving, is going to be worth it to you? You're a very seasoned NFBC player.
If there are no reports of a contract or he's made the team or anything, I think the market is going to get ahead of itself. And potentially it already has. His minimum pick in all drafts is 101, and that happened on January 3rd. And that's kind of the trend. If you go on the NFBC, you click on a player, it'll show you all the dots of where they get drafted. And earlier on, you're seeing 200s, 300s, even into the 400s. But the hype has really gotten out of hand. If we hear that he's breaking camp, I wouldn't be surprised to see people take him with a top 50, top 60 pick. Kind of what happened with Volpe a couple of years ago. When we heard Volpe was making camp, he was like a 4th, 5th rounder in some NFBC leagues. Obviously didn't work out, but when a guy has that kind of sky-high ceiling, people will keep pushing and pushing and pushing. If there's no guarantee of him making camp, anywhere inside the top 200 feels way too rich for me. But I think that will just mean I'm out on him at that point because you're not going to get him outside the top 200. But taking that chance, I don't really want to do it without the clarity.
And what's different about him than McGonigle, just the last thing, is like if McGonigle doesn't break camp, his timeline is very foreseeable within that first month. I mean, I guess you could argue like he didn't get to AAA and maybe not, but I think the path is a lot easier. If Konnor Griffin goes back to AA and he doesn't have a contract in place, and the Pirates continuously keep signing, it's like White Sox type of thing. They just sign these these vagabond type of players that it's like 1-year deals, and these nomads that come in and it just blocks everybody. There's a perceivable path where Konnor Griffin isn't up until like July or something like that. If he does sign the deal, what do you think the proper placement is for he signs? They say, guess what? He's our everyday shortstop. He's the kid. He's going to be up. What do you think his value is as far as drafts go?
Then I see him as a top 100-ish type of player. The guys right inside the top 100 are Michael Harris, Jeremy Pena, Sal Perez, Nico Horner, Tyler Soderstrom. I can see him getting into that type of range with some established players, but also maybe a little bit of some disappointments with Harris, et cetera. But this feels like the kind of range where he would end up if we know he's making camp in the average league. I think NFBC players are going to go absolutely crazy if they see that, and he'll be a top, he'll probably go in the 60s, 70s on average. I think if you're talking Yahoo, ESPN, CBS, standard type of leagues, if we hear he's making camp, I think he goes right around pick 100.
Yeah, I think he's going to go inside the top 100. If he has a full season under his plate, I think Konnor Griffin legitimately is going to be a 15 to 20 homer guy. I think his batting average is going to have a little bit of struggle, but that might be in the 250 range, and I think the guy could steal 30 bases. I legitimately think you could see a 20-30 season out of him. But so paying inside the top 5 might be risky. I think his profile is a little bit more risky from the hit side than Kevin McGonigle, but those are the elite options. We don't have guarantees. The 2 elite options, by the way, are players that did not get to AAA, but those are the players from a skill set standpoint that are the best to bet on. But the next tier we're going to talk about here in a second, there is a lot more viability for these players to either break camp or be up soon, but they just don't share quite the same productive or production output that both of these two guys would have.
We're going to head to Queens in a second and talk about a Mets prospect. But first, championships are won at the draft, and that's where FantasyPros MLB Draft Wizard gives you the edge. You can sync your league in seconds and run realistic mock drafts using your exact settings. Our tools show you who you should take next, and the odds your favorite players will still be on the board in the next round. If you're in a pinch, just ask Coach for real-time advice tailored to your draft. Plus, you can view player news, projections, and build your own tiered cheat sheet. Draft like a pro with FantasyPros MLB Draft Wizard at fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard. All right, Welshie. Carson Benge, he is the next guy we're going to talk about. I could potentially be butchering that name. I think it's roughly correct, but the Mets prospect had 15 home runs and 22 stolen bases over 116 games last year, high A, double A, and triple A. Now, he's got a very reasonable price in early drafts. 372 is his ADP. There are people who want him to start the season in the Mets outfield, and currently on Roster Resource, which is Fangraph's projected playing time source, they have him slotted in as the starting left fielder right now. Is that going to happen on opening day?
Well, the only way it seems like it for sure will not happen is the Kyle Tucker rumors that are floating around. If Kyle Tucker were to sign with them, I think that destroys that. But for all intents and purposes, they told us that the trade of Brandon Nimmo was to be able to free up spot and space for some high-end players that they've got in their system that they want to get up, a la Carson Benge. They've got some other, uniquely talented players that have experimented with the outfield. Ronnie Mauricio had been doing that. Luis Angel Acuna had been doing that. So those are possibilities. Those are the excuses to maybe keeping a guy like Benge down. But Benge looks like he almost could kind of fit like a higher productive mold than what Brandon Nimmo was before. Like you're saying high OBP, you're saying high average, 15 homers, 22 stolen bases this past year, solid exit velocities. There might be some struggles from like a righty lefty perspective. He hit 295 versus righties versus 232 against lefties. And I believe that was at least in double A. I think those were the double A at bats here. So, you could have some potential platooning type of things, but Benge does a little bit of everything. And the on-base skills specifically are something that I think they see as a big high plus because he can also play a solid defense. But if a guy like Kyle Tucker ends up coming in, that is going to put a complete stunt in that. But this guy and the next guy we're talking about, are they elite skill sets from prospects? Maybe not necessarily. Can you get 20-20 out of Benge in a full season? Yeah, you could. If he hits solid early in the year, could he move up the lineup? Yes, he could with high OBP. And imagine hitting and having, between Lindor and Soto, or hitting in front of both of those guys. Like, the possibilities are really endless with him. And there is an open path right now. So that's what makes him so interesting. It's not quite the elite skill set of McGonigle and Konnor Griffin, but he's a definite guy that you're going to want to own. And sometimes these guys just having a path at playing time is like our biggest cue marker as a prospect that we want.
And the fact that his price is still so low, I mentioned Griffin inside the top 200, McGonigle pushing top 250. Benge, even just looking at the recent sample of drafts, he's still sometimes falling outside of the top 400 picks. So if you are playing in a deeper league, perhaps you're drafting NL only early this year, Carson Benge should be somebody that you are paying attention to. I just don't know how much, even if they signed Kyle Tucker, I don't know how much Tyrone Taylor should really be playing necessarily. I know they like him for the defense, but hasn't been a league average bat since 2022. Whereas with Benge, you look at even at the projections, Oopsie came out. My colleague Jordan Rosenblum does a good job with them. They go for more than a 50th percentile outcome. They're more.
Yeah, it's an upside projection play.
Like a 75th kind of percentile. They have him for 14 homers, 8 steals, and a 243 average over just 109 games. So if he makes the opening day roster, you up that playing time, you could easily see a 20-10 season from him. And from pick 350, I think we would all happily sign up for that. Let's talk Justin Crawford. This was the first time I ever felt old covering baseball, was that Carl Crawford's son is playing baseball now. And like father, like son, he's doing exactly what his dad was doing statistically. What he did last year was 7 homers, 46 steals, and 334. Yeah, that's pretty much Carl Crawford for you. The only real problem I have with this profile is the ground balls, Welsh, at every level. Yeah. 60% ground ball rate is really, really hard. Especially when you're talking from a power perspective. Is he ever going to hit more than 10 home runs? I don't know, but the potential for 40-plus stolen bases with a good batting average is pretty appealing. Could he crack the opening day roster in Philly?
Well, the early indications are that he is. So, I mean, this is like this little tier bucket of 2 players that look like they are primed, and roster resource and depth charts are at least telling us that this is going to be the case. And they've been talking out of camps that, like they're going to trade Castellanos. And a lot of this work is that like Justin Crawford is going to be given the opportunity. He plays a plus defense. You mentioned the ground ball rates, absolutely going to be a concern of like where his future power is going to end up. He only hit 7 homers this past year, but he stole 46 bases with a 334 batting average. In AAA, according to Prospect Savant, he did end up having a pretty interesting 45% hard hit rate. So when you worry about the overall, like, what is the batted ball skill going to look like? Like, I think he's a doubles machine and he's an extra base guy. Is he going to, be ever a source of big power? Probably not. Things are going to have to change. He had a 9% pulled air percentage in AAA. Like, that's probably going to even teeter down in the minor. He's going to have to pull the ball. He's going to have to get the ball in the air, and he's going to have to lift it. It's not something he does right now, but he's registered a 110 EV in AAA. He's got a 45% hard hit rate, and he's going to steal a bunch of bases and he gets on base. So, is this Chandler Simpson? Maybe. The thing I think it holds him back a little bit is he's probably not going to hit high in the lineup. So runs are going to be a tiny bit scarce. RBIs will be scarce and homers. So that does put into question, like, what is his overall value going to be? But if he does get regular playing time and break the season, that Phillies team, he could still score 80 runs. And then guess what? He is relatively Chandler Simpson or an outfield Xavier Edwards type. Like, there's just not going to be a lot of power. There's going to be a ton of stolen bases. He gets on base. He makes really, really good contact. He doesn't whiff a whole bunch at 18% whiff rate. That was like almost top 10 percentile in AAA this past year. Makes a ton of contact, 92% zone contact. Like, Justin Crawford doesn't fit every single team, but he is free. He should get playing time, and he will be an elite source of stolen bases if he does break camp, which looks like he's going to do.
ADP over the last month, 288 with a range of 260 to 330. So he's still somebody that is pretty affordable. And again, why I emphasize, like, if you're not going to draft every team early, that I understand it. But if you're doing a bunch of leagues, draft a couple early. You might get some really nice bargains where you will not be seeing them come later into March, and even if you're drafting into early April, like some people might.
He's going to rise when you get into spring training, and then you actually see that he's working with the major league team. Like, that will be something that's going to inherently rise. I don't remember do you happen to have it still up, like what Oopsie or Bat X puts on the stolen base marker? Because he's one of those guys, if you stretch out the season, he could be near the tippy top on stolen bases too. Because that is where he's going to make his money.
Oopsie has him 99 games, 427 plate appearances, and 24 stolen bases.
So full season, they're probably looking at 35 to 40 stolen bases on that upper 50th percentile. So just remember that.
With a decent batting average, too. It's not like it's coming with a 200 batting average. Every system has him projected at the worst for 261. So you're not just getting the one category. He's not necessarily just a rabbit, especially in that lineup. Even at the bottom, there could be some good things that come for Justin Crawford. Let's move on to Robby Snelling, who potentially could have had a job open up a little bit with the Edward Cabrera trade. Now, Robby Snelling may open the season in the Miami rotation. I don't see that projected as of right now on roster resource. They have Alcantara, Yuri, Weathers, Max Meyer, Braxton Garrett, but there could be a chance for Robby Snelling. 25 starts last year with a 2.51 ERA, a 1.11 WHIP, and a 30% strikeout rate. The thing that stood out to me a lot too, 28% hard hit rate allowed against. Any chance they open the season, like barring an injury, is there any chance that they choose to start the season with him in the rotation, you think, over a guy like maybe Meyer or Garrett?
So your current situation, I do think there's a possibility. I think if everything stays as is, part of this trade, like I put this tweet out, it was like one of the biggest winners of the Edward Cabrera trade was Robby Snelling, because that's one step closer. I do think in the current iteration, 100% they might be like, hey, the final spots are going down to, Bop and Snelling. It might be the final two spots are between these 3 or 4 players. But also, I don't think that the Marlins necessarily could be done. I think Weathers has been thrown out there. Obviously, Sandy is going to get traded at some point this season. We are going to see Robby Snelling this year. That's not a question. The possibility, though, is after the Cabrera trade, he could break camp and he can have significant production this season. And outside of even the numbers, Robby Snelling was one of the best pitchers like 2 years ago in the minors. And then he kind of fell apart, or 3 years ago. And then we had this 2.5 ERA season, massive strikeouts, good whip. Part of that also came by added velo. He had lost velo the previous season. This year, 2 mile-per-hour increase on his fastball and his slider. The Marlins were able to fix him. He was able to get right. That trade was weird and kind of like screwed with him between the Padres and going to the Marlins. And then this past full season, all the velo was back healthy, and he's still a really young dude, 22-year-old left-handed pitcher. I think there's an easy spot in the rotation. I think he's next up before Thomas White, and I think this Edward Cabrera trade was an early signal that Robby Snelling is going to get a significant look. Now, they may want to baby him a little bit. Maybe they don't want him to have 180 innings or something like that, so maybe you don't have him the first month. I would be surprised. I'd be shocked if he's not up by June. I would be a little like, if he's not up by May. And I think there's a legitimate shot that not only is in competition, but there could be another move, and that would vault Robby Snelling into being a starter. So yeah, the Edward Cabrera trade definitely had some impact on, I think, his valuation. And I think he is one of the top pitchers to be paying attention to in this entire market. There's another guy we're going to talk about in a second that looks like he's got more of a solidified spot, but I would not discount Robby Snelling as someone that could have some significant fantasy impact this season, and he's a strikeout guy. He can get some massive strikeouts.
Is it crazy to say I actually kind of like the Marlins? Their lineup looks not too bad. The rotation looks pretty good. They signed a closer. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but this is a team that has definitely improved. If they don't trade Sandy and you get Sandy, Yuri Perez, Weathers, Snelling, that's a really good rotation.
Yeah, let me see what that win total is in the betting market. I might take that over. Cal Stowers is one of my favorite just guys. I want to draft him everywhere I possibly can. They do have a really interesting collection of players and some values. Like Otto Lopez is kind of a sneaky value. Stolen bases on Edwards. They just got Casey, who could be in that lineup. And Robby Snelling is one of those guys that, like the reason you want him, if you're in a stash market, like I said, he's going to be one of the top probably 3 pitching prospects you're going to want this season. We've been burned by that before. Bubba Chandler burned us last season, but this Marlin team, they might be competitive. They might still push a couple more pieces out, and it would be because if Sandy was traded or Weathers was moved or something like that, or even if they didn't want to put Garrett there, I think it would be because the belief of what Robby Snelling can do, and I think last season told that story, so don't sleep on Robby.
Do not sleep on Robby. Let's head back to Philadelphia and talk a little bit about Aidan Miller. Now, his situation could become complicated if the Phillies end up signing Bo Bichette. I've heard that talked about a lot. That would probably kill what playing time we can hope to see from him with Bohm, with Turner, with Stott. If they add Bichette, I don't know where Aidan Miller is going to play. But as of today, they don't have Bo Bichette. Aidan Miller had a really solid year in 2025. 14 homers, 59 steals, and a 264 average over 116 games. leaving Bo Bichette out of the equation for a second, where does he fit in this lineup? Is he the third baseman? How do you think they'd fit him in, Welsh?
He is the third baseman. He's working out at third base. That is the transitional move, as far as I'm told and know, is that the shortstop is going to be making that move to third base. Why that makes him so interesting is Alec Bohm feels like he's 1 foot out. He's on a 1-year deal. He's a free agent after this year. They've been trying to trade him for years. I still think this team, especially if they were to pick up Bo Bichette, would trade him. And that opens up a spot because it looks like Bo Bichette would go over and play second base. Maybe the early iteration would be he plays third and Bryce Stott plays second. But Aidan Miller's future is going to be at third base. And that's intriguing because the dude stole 59 bases this past year, hit 14 homers, 264 with almost a 400 OBP. I mean, out of position stat, it's kind of like Michael Garcia. I know that's a weird comp to him, but think of it like that. Aidan Miller can hit the ball hard. He steals bases positionally because out of position if he were to be playing third base. And that looks like the future. He will be the third baseman in 2027. But this team might start making the moves to just have that happen sooner or happen in season. We'll have to see. He's recovering from a wrist thing that I think maybe could be the slow hampering, but this is another one of those. Watch what happens in camp. Even if they bring in Bo Bichette, they might say Aidan Miller and Bryson Stott are vying for this spot. And if they would have to trade Alec Bohm. But the future is him playing third base. He will play third base this year. And if he does, his profile is so fascinating because of the stolen bases. And I think the average is going to stick. I don't think he's a big necessarily a big strikeout liability. And the dude attempted over 70 stolen bases in the minors this past season while only having around 430 at bats. So we are going to want Aidan Miller when he's up. We're going to want him if he does break camp, but he is definitely one we are going to be targeting in drafts or at worst in free agency if he doesn't break camp.
I think the batting average could go up a little bit as well, too. The plate discipline numbers are so good. Only a 16% chase rate, 90 zone contact, 9% swinging strike rate. The projections have him as a 230 hitter. Some of them even into the 220s. I think he could exceed that.
Yeah.
If things go right.
Also, according to Prospect Savant, and it's a relatively low sample size they have at AAA, but he had a 90th percentile of 106. I mean, that's significant enough. Really, really low chase rates as well. Barrel rates look good, and he pulled the ball in the air 25% of the time. That's an elite number in the major leagues. Short sample size in AAA, but if he's pulling the ball in the air with those hard hit numbers, he's stealing. And we see low chase and whiff rates where he's going to hit for average. Aidan Miller could be rookie of the year eligible if he were to get a majority of the time. That's just what's in question. So you got to put a pin in him. There is a path, and it opens up as soon as Alec Bohm is gone. I think regardless if Bo Bichette is there or not.
It'd be interesting. I hope for my own sake that Bo Bichette is not there, but it's not trending like he's going back to Toronto at this point. But let's stick around in Philly. We got one more. People in Philly are going to like this episode. We're talking about all of their farmhands. And Andrew Painter might be the one that has gotten the most fame over the years. Top pitching prospect, dealt with an injury, missed a couple of seasons. Doesn't seem quite like peak Andrew Painter like he was before the injury, but I think there's still a lot of potential. He had 26 starts last season. It was a 5.26 ERA, but we're still seeing the strikeouts starting to trend back up. The walk rate was at 9%. There are some positives. I'm not going to paint it all through rose-colored glasses. It wasn't a great year for him. But I really like Andrew Painter, and I have him ranked 62nd in my top 100 starting pitchers for the year. I like him. He's going to be starting the year in the rotation. And I think that there's a good chance that we see him kind of continue to progress to those pre-injury levels, Welsh.
Well, it's an interesting note, too. Maybe one of the reasons why Miller gets pressed back is the team doesn't want to, roll out 12 different rookies. They don't want to roll out Justin Crawford. They don't want to roll out Andrew Painter and Aidan Miller. But when you got talented players that you can put around, some of the best in the game in Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber, you do that. You definitely do that. Andrew Painter is such a fascinating story because there are a lot of people that are out and they're absolutely results oriented on him. Not seeing some of the same pieces you saw from him when he was 20-year-old that was going to break camp. He's had a really slow run. I interacted with him a lot in the Arizona Fall League. And one of the things I I was really impressed with was the cool, calm demeanor. He was unfazed by what the results had to be. The results were an execution, and the execution was the most important thing to him, whether, he got hit up or anything like that. And I think a lot of that carried over into this past year. You're seeing the velo still in there. Dude's still throwing 96 on a 4-stream. He's got like a 5 or 6 pitch mix that he uses. His cutter has been this really dominating pitch that I got to see in the Arizona Fall League. I like the curve. He spins it really well. And some of the Prospect Savant page shows some of what that ended up looking like. He got some really good chase numbers as well. And maybe more importantly is that, if Ranger Suarez is leaving, like, he is a legitimate candidate for the 5th spot in that rotation. Like, they babied him enough. They didn't press the innings too much. He got some significant innings this year that I think he can go 150, maybe 160 into this season. And I think he's going to get that shot. Maybe of all the prospects we've talked about, him and Crawford, ironically on the same team, are currently, from roster resource and depth chart perspectives, but also just a likelihood, the most likely to get production. I think Andrew Painter's stats are holding him back from what the actual production can be. I think there's a lot of run support there. You are going to have to watch the homer numbers, but I like Andrew Painter, I think, more than others. I think he's a super smart pitcher, great pitch mix. I think that cutter is going to play way better in the majors than people are giving credit for, and he is going to get some time. And that is why, he kind of rounds out the, if they make it, you're going to want them prospects. But him and Robby Snelling, I think, kind of own the market of non-debuted prospects from a pitching perspective that you want to pay attention to. Obviously, Savage and Butler and Bubba Chandler, all those guys are on people's minds, whether they're prospect eligible or not. This is the next crop, and Painter gets a lot of the attention, but that's why I still think Snelling could be a little bit more valuable. But I will be drafting Andrew Painter late in drafts with the expectation he's going to have a rotation spot.
I will be as well. I have him ranked maybe 15 spots, 20 spots ahead of his ADP at the moment in my initial rankings. He's an interesting name because a lot of the time when you look at the projections on Fangraphs, a lot of them are fairly similar, 3.4 ERA, 3.5 ERA. They're all over the place with Andrew Painter, but the most accurate projections, the most accurate standalone projections have been the bat over the last 5-7 years, and they are the most bullish on him by a mile. A 3.60 ERA, a 1.13 whip, a 26% strikeout rate, and they think the command is going to start to come back a little bit more this year, another year removed from surgery. If you are a projections guy, you probably should be. If you like the bat, you probably should. Then you probably like Andrew Painter. We're going to keep it going in just a second after Welsh tells you all about our presenting sponsor.
Today's episode, my friends, are brought to you by our sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet, there is still time to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. So here's what you got to do. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you could not only get your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. Then you could start placing some MLB futures and start thinking MLB, my friends. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit today. Let's go talk about the rest of the prospects you guys got to own.
Colt Emerson is where we're going to pick up here. Still very young. He just turned 20 years old. And in his age 19 season in the minors, 16 homers, 14 steals, a 285 batting average. The question, like it is for all these players, is where will he fit in? Is he going to play short? Is he potentially going to play second or third? It is an area where the Mariners could see some improvements. Cole Young, Ben Williamson, J.P. Crawford projected to make up the bottom third of their order. You see him fitting in at second, potentially Welsh, maybe third. Where's the spot for Colt Emerson?
Yeah, I think the reason we put him on this list, so I mean, this tier is the deeper options. Things have to go their way. They're, are they really viable? We stop for a second just from a strategy perspective, and you look and you're like, you guys aren't playing in it. We're talking NFBC a lot, but you guys are playing in your like home leagues. Kevin McGonigle and Konnor Griffin, they're going to be drafted. That next tier are going to be a collection of different players that could get drafted in different ways of how you can stash in your home leagues and stuff like that. Are the guys we're about to talk about going to be drafted at this stage? No, unless something changes. But they're guys that you need to pay attention to, and you may want to have on a must-have list if they get a job. And Colt Emerson, and the fact actually all three of these players we're going to talk about, they're all potential homes could be at second base for their respective teams. They're all just an injury or a commitment away from it, unlike some of these other guys. And Colt Emerson in the playoffs was actually added to the Mariners taxi practice squad to potentially be able to be available for a playoff run. That didn't end up happening for him. They've got his buddy Cole Young currently as a second baseman, but Colt Emerson is ready. And I think that's the big important thing. Like, there's only so much more. You're really not going to get too much more out of him continuing him in the minors. He hit 285, 16 homers, 14 stolen bases. For a second straight year, he moved 3 different levels. He didn't play a ton of AAA, but it's enough of AAA where, by the way, he hit 364 in AAA, hit 280 in AA, and 280 in High A, that I don't think there's much more that they need to work on. He played in the Arizona Fall League the year before. He's more of a contact base hitter than a power guy. Is there 20 home run potential? Yeah, maybe. But I watched a guy hit 5 doubles in an Arizona Fall League game. Like, this is a guy that is going to be between 280 and 300. You put him as probably like a quintessential number 2 hitter, because the guy can also get on base. He had a 383 average. He can steal some bases, score a lot of runs. He might be a better real life player than a fantasy player, but I think the main point is they see the upside so exponentially that I think they're going to have him and Cole Young fight this out. And Colt Emerson has a legitimate shot to take this spot at second base out of camp over Cole Young. We'll see how it plays out. But Colt Emerson is on a very close line of needing to be up in the majors. And JP Crawford's not going anywhere unless he gets hurt, but there's a clear opening at second base. And that's what makes him interesting. I will say, you know, what the fantasy production is, it maybe is a little bit muted. I think he has the best path of the next 3 prospects we're going to talk about right now. But the best case scenario is something between like a 15 and probably a 15-15 guy with high runs and a really high batting average. That'll still play, but it isn't like elite, but the playing time might be.
He hits the absolute crap out of the ball. There were 17 batted ball events in AAA, 11 hard hits. That is, even in a small sample size, something you got to take note of. And the price, I mean, if you are in one of those early drafts, closing in on pick 400, 395 is his ADP over the last 20 drafts. So not an expensive piece if you're looking for some middle infield depth at the end of your draft. Let's keep talking about middle infield and go to JJ Wetherholt. I don't know where the role would be for JJ Wetherholt. I'm imagining it would probably be second base. Brendan Donovan has been talked about as a potential trade target. I don't think Mason Wynn is giving up shortstop anytime soon. But JJ Wetherholt, over 109 games last year, AA, AAA, with 17 homers, 23 steals, and a 306 average. It was a 154 WRC plus. He walked as much as he struck out, 48% hard hit rate. There's a lot to like about Wetherholt. Where does he end up on the diamond, though, Welsh?
Yeah, it's a second base. This is an interesting one because I want to say we might have talked about him in the other prospect one that was before the beginning of the new year. What has transpired is the willingness for the Cardinals team to move off of Brendan Donovan. And I think that's the big clear-cut thing. I think Donovan is traded this season, whether it is, in the next month, or maybe it's happened as you're recording this, or sometime in mid-season when the Cardinals are most likely out of this. But I believe that JJ Wetherholt is the future and kind of one of the reasons they're comfortable doing this. The team is in a soft reboot as well. They got a bunch of young, talented players that they can put out this competitive roster, but they just need to, prioritize where they can. And like a JJ Wetherholt is a guy that's going to come up, and I think he's going to eat. I think he is going to be a stud when he's up, but there's a huge question mark. I think his bat sometimes to me resembles Corbin Carroll. He doesn't steal at quite the aggressive rate, but he stole 23 this past season and just over 400 at bats, 17 homers, gets the ball in the air, great slash line, really great patience. His really answered the call at every level. They put him at AA and then went to AAA, hit 300 at both levels. This is a dude that I think is a 2020 fantasy option at minimum when given the opportunity. If Brendan Donovan is traded, I think this arrow goes up even more. That'll be one of those where I'm like, hey, the biggest winner is JJ Wetherholt. Not a guarantee that they give it to him right out the gates. Maybe they slow roll him. I don't think so. 23-year-old college-based bat who's advanced. I think he'd be close into one of the faces of the organization when he comes up. So you're going to have to pay attention. I think he's a huge target. We'll probably talk about him a lot in season on leading off here on Fantasy Pros as a guy that we're going to have to pay attention to if he's not up. But he's super, super exciting. And he is unlike Colt Emerson, who I think is vying for the spot. We just need Brendan Donovan to go for there to be a competition that JJ Wetherholt can really overtake. So pay attention to Wetherholt. He will be a must-own player when it makes sense, and you will know when it makes sense because they'll tell us he's either got the job or he is fighting for it out of camp.
And the versatility of Donovan means that even if he doesn't get traded, I wouldn't say that that's the end of Wetherholt because Donovan can play all over the field. If they don't find a trade If they don't find a trade partner for him, they could put Donovan in the outfield. I mean, he can literally play just about anywhere except for behind the dish. I think he's played at every single position in his career except for center field and catcher. So the trade falls through. Maybe people will think, oh, Wetherholt's not getting a job. Maybe that'll be a little bit of a buying opportunity.
An interesting path to that, to add to it, is we're just waiting for Arenado to be traded. If Arenado goes, you could see a path. I mean, maybe they put Wetherholt there, but maybe Brendan Donovan can go and be the third baseman, and Wetherholt could get that second base job. We got to keep our ears to the ground, but he's going to be one of those, once the bat signal is out, we're going to go running. And that's what, and like, if all things considered, if it was Emerson and Wetherholt at the same time, I would take JJ Wetherholt. In fact, I think JJ Wetherholt could be close to going to an elite option if there was a clearer path. So from a talent perspective, he's one of those guys that you want to bet on.
And to that Donovan point, last time he played third base regularly was 2022. It was 7 defensive runs saved, 3 outs above average, in only 189 innings. So he's shown he can be a plus defender there. Just something to chew on in case he doesn't end up getting traded. We got one more name for you guys, and that is the number 1 overall pick in the 2024 Major League Draft. That was Travis Bazzana. 84 games last year, spread out amongst the complex league, AA, AAA. 9 homers, 12 steals, 245 batting average, but a 137 WRC plus, driven in large part by an 18% walk rate. He knows how to get on base. I won't say that he has lived up to that hype as the number 1 prospect, but there's still a lot of promise for Bazzana. What are the Guardians going to do with him, though? Is he open camp with the team? Is he a midseason call-up? Currently not listed in the starting lineup on roster resource, but do you think there's a chance he's in there on April 1st?
Yeah, I think there's a discussion point for it. To me, he's like the Andrew Painter of hitters right now, and it hasn't had the same amount of time. Like, people are just over him. And again, It is just only, and I get it. Like, we have to be results oriented and stats oriented, but it's off of a very short sample size. He was struggling with injury. He was out for a significant amount of time out here in Arizona rehabbing. He's really interesting because, like, he's kind of aggressive, yet he can still run really good walk rates. Like, I use this on a show on In This League, but like Edward Julian was one of those guys that was one of the most passive in early counts and then aggressive in late counts. Like, that's not Bazzana. Bazzana just really has an understanding of the zone. He does a really good job of getting his bat on the ball, and he's just aggressive at all points. He wants to pull the ball. He wants to get the ball in the air. He put up great hard hit numbers in college. We saw kind of average stuff in the short sample size of some of the AAA, according to Prospect Savant, 12% barrel, 41% hard hit rate, nothing necessarily to write home about. 90th percentile EV was like 101. But the guy coming off of the injury, I think, is primed to have a bigger breakout. Super smart baseball player. I think currently they have a Gabriel Arias scheduled as a second baseman, according to roster resource. And I don't think that is a lockdown position. I think Bazzana is going to get an opportunity to break camp. He might not do it. I think he has to answer some questions. The batting average was not great last year. His contact ability, not super great. But I think if he comes out, he's healthy, he hits, he shows a propensity to drop, the strikeout rates. He had a high 27% AAA strikeout rate, but he had 24% walk rate in the short sample size. That K rate goes and he hits for contact. I don't see why this team doesn't want to start activating these guys right now. I think that was the whole point of Bazzana. So I think he legitimately is a shot out of camp. He's a little bit more questionable because we got to see what the production looks like. But when things go right, that ballpark is going to be a huge benefit for Bazzana. He legitimately could hit 30 homers if he hits for average. Like, I don't think that's a question in his game. He could be one of those big primary second base power hitters, but we've got to see it all come into play, and it hasn't yet. So again, this tier are question marks. Colt Emerson in fighting for the job and what is the fantasy production. JJ Wetherholt being blocked. Travis Bazzana having that big second step as far as production. But these are guys that you're going to want to pay attention to. These are, I think, the majority of the prime prospects in different views. These 10 prospects are a lot of the big guys that you're going to be paying attention to from draft day to probably the first month or two in waivers. These should be the guys you're going to want to be fighting for.
I'm interested in Bazzana. Just the more I dig into the plate discipline, he doesn't chase, decent contact rates. Yep. The swing strike rate is low. You talk about the power upside. Gabriel Arias, he's a serviceable defender, but holy cow, 35% strikeout rate, 21% swinging strike rate, 70% zone contact. He's not really a major leaguer. He's getting by as a major leaguer, but Bazzana, I would not be shocked at all to see him take that job. But guys, those are 10 must-have fantasy baseball prospects that you should be targeting heading into 2026. Let us know down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are there other prospects you think have a better chance of making camp? Let us know. Subscribe to the channel. We got a lot in store for you guys over the next couple months. But for Chris Welsh, I am Joe Orrico. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Fantasy Pros Baseball Podcast.
Peace.